Welcome to another episode of Love Living Local 315. We are your hosts, Scott and Kelly Greats, and today we're excited to welcome Joe Palumbo to the show. Joe is born and raised in Central New York, a former Ithaca College football standout. He's a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, and he's channeled his competitive spirit into making a real difference here locally. As Senior Vice President at EP Wealth Advisors and co-founder of Kristin's Fund, Joe splits his time between San Diego and Central New York, where he's pioneering a unique approach to preventing domestic violence through sport. His A Call to Men football camp combines athletic training with character development for young men across the region. He's partnered with Utica University for several years. Over 1,000 young men have gone through this camp because of the generosity and hard work of those at Kristin's Fund. This is completely free, so there's no charge to anyone who wants to go through it. This year it is June 23rd and 24th, so we highly recommend you connect with Joe and his team to get your child involved in this camp. So let's welcome Joe Palumbo to the show. All right,
God, there's a whole bag.
Let's start with the super hard question right out of the gate. So I'm looking at notes here. National championship football player, Ithaca, go Bombers, successful financial advisor, nonprofit founder, father, husband. Who is Joe Palumbo?
He's all those things. He's all those things. Smaller parts now than they used to be, but yeah, I'd say primarily the father and the husband part, obviously, and then try to take on what I can to help move the needle a little bit, especially with Kristin's Fund, obviously, but try to stay focused on the most important things and then fit in whatever I can. But I think I wrote down too, just how do I make an impact? That's kind of what I'm always looking to do, whether it's through my work, with my family, walking around town or getting coffee. I try to put a smile on people's face. So I think people would say that about me if you ask who I am. Like, Joe's a happy-go-lucky guy, likes to keep people high in spirits and with a smile on their face.
Yeah. Well, it helps that you're always smiling.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
And I forgot black belt. That was supposed to be on the list. You're a black belt as well.
Yeah.
So don't try to mess with him, Kel.
No.
I wouldn't. Are you kidding me? So tell us a little bit about Kristin and Kristin's Fund and the mission.
How far do you want to go back? The whole story?
Up to you.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess we probably should. Kristin's Fund goes back to when my sister passed away from a domestic violence incident. Her and her husband passed away in that same incident, 2009, September 28th. Obviously, a devastating moment for us, for the family, for the community.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea at the time that it had this ripple effect throughout the local community, throughout New York State. People, later on told us they heard about it and how it affected them. So, that was a key moment in life, a tough one, obviously, a tragic one. But going back to who I am, I'm the type of person that if there's a challenge, if there's a punch to the gut, there's a reaction, and there's only one reaction in my mind, and that's move forward. Make the best out of that situation, no matter how difficult. So after that, my sister Gina spearheaded getting something started. We didn't know what, but we wanted to make a change in the community and an impact so that families didn't have to go through what we went through. How do we do that? That was the question. Mm-hmm. All right, where do we begin? We're just a few people here in the community trying to come up with an idea that will have a really big impact in eliminating domestic violence and especially fatal domestic violence incidents. So Gina partnered with the YWCA at the time, who's a domestic violence service provider for Oneida County, and they came up with some ideas on how to do it. And then from there, it just kind of grew as ideas came along, and we formed our organization, Kristin's Fund, nonprofit, and then partnered with the YWCA a couple times. And then we just kind of put some thought into it. Okay, what is the next step, and how are we really going to make this impact in the community to make families stronger, to make the community safer, and then just grow the community in strength through that. and that's where the football camp kind of came into my mind as the only male in the organization. And with my background, I thought, how do I reach kids and get the message across to them at the right age? 20 is too late, probably. So if you're learning the wrong lessons or you don't learn them early enough, the cycle continues. So there was a few connections that I had made that kind of popped that idea into my head along the way, and that's kind of how it all got started.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It is. It's a great message, not only for boys, obviously, that love football, and that's what they're thinking about, but to tie it into what a healthy relationship looks like and certain things like that. That's huge that you're doing it at such a young age.
How early do you reach kids in their journey? Like, are you doing work at the elementary school level?
We have done some programs. So the other partnership we had was with Catholic Charities here in Herkimer County, and they're the domestic violence service provider here. So what we did, I think it was maybe our first initiative. We funded through our fundraising. We then funded Catholic Charities program where they had teachers that would go into schools, and I think it was all through elementary ages, like as early as possible, to get that message across. And they did the teaching, and we funded the salary for these teachers.
They still do that in the schools now. Like when I was teaching, they would come in and they would tell you what is safe, how people, it's definitely
age-appropriate lessons on the basics of what is a red flag, what is a signal that this might not be a healthy relationship.
What do you do if you feel uncomfortable?
And what do you do?
Yeah.
So I think that was our initial big initiative that we came out of the gate. We were introduced to some folks at Catholic Charities, so that was our first thing I think that we really funded on an annual basis.
How difficult is it? I mean, because this is a lot of it's learned behavior, right? So there's that cycle that we talk about where kids are experiencing it, seeing it at home. How do you get to those kids to help them break the cycle? Because it's scary for them, right? I mean, it's their home, and to go against what they're seeing is not easy.
Not easy at all. And I had no idea until, what I learned. I read some books, I did some counseling, did some volunteering. So I had no idea. And I think most people don't have any idea of how common it is for kids to grow up in an abusive household. So that was eye-opening for me. And then how do you reach them? And that's the whole point of the football camp is I had some contacts at the NFL, and I asked them about some keynote speakers for our first Gala event. I was looking for a speaker, and there was a guy that I had in mind. I tried to reach, and he was unavailable. His name was Joe Ehrman. I don't know if you know who he is at all.
No.
I know you're a reader. You ever read the book called A Season of Life?
I have not.
I highly recommend it. It's probably one of the top 5 most transformational books that I've ever read. Oh. So this guy, Joe Ehrman, he was a Syracuse football player, All-American back in the 70s. And then he was a first-round draft pick of the Colts, had a whole nice, long NFL career. And then his brother, I believe, got cancer at some point later on after he retired, and it affected him deeply. And so he started questioning how they were raised, and they were raised by an abusive father. And he ended up becoming a minister. I'll cut it short. But he became a minister. He started coaching. He coached at one of the Catholic schools down in the Baltimore area. And he started this transformational coaching movement. I guess I would say he's probably this founder of that movement. And it's about teaching the kids more than football. Some coaches in any sport, I should say, it's either transactional, like there's a coach who's like, we're going to win, we're going to fight, we're going to win. It's all about winning and losing. And Joe Ehrman, after everything he learned about his life, he learned it's not, if you're a coach, it's much more about teaching the kids life lessons along the way and how to be, in our case, respectful young men. Yeah. So he focused on teaching that. Anyways, the long story short is I tried to get Joe Ehrman as our speaker, and my NFL contact said he's not available, but you should check out this guy, Tony Porter, he runs this organization called A Call to Men. Very similar message. That's all they focus on is raising men to be respectful and to grow up in a healthy relationship. So I reached out to Tony Porter. We got Tony as our keynote speaker for our first gala. And the more I got to know him, he told me they were doing football camps. I think it was down in Georgia, with the intent on getting that message across to kids at football. Because coaches, as we all know, can be someone that the kids look up to more than their parents,
Sure.
more than anyone else in their community. The coaches, if the coaches are getting this message across, a lot of the kids are going to listen because that coach has their attention every single day, hours a day. And so who better than a coach to kind of get this message across? So with that thought, I said, okay, football can be the way I make my impact with Kristin's Fund. Let's do football camps. Let's partner with the Call to Men, and let's get that message across to kids as early. We start, I think we invite 6th graders, so like 12 years old up through seniors in high school.
Yeah. You know, it's so funny. We were just talking about this. I can't remember in what capacity, but, teacher development days and these leadership workshops that the teachers go through. But there's a lot of coaches that aren't teachers, right, at the school level. And, I was saying that I think the coaches need to go through these even more so than the teachers. Now, I'm just speaking through my lens, but those were my idols, heroes, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? Exactly. When I was a kid, it was like, hey, I'd literally run through a wall for a coach, and a teacher is like, meh. But yeah, it's so powerful. A true leader is someone who can create other leaders. And, that's what you and your team and the coaches you're working with are doing. So let's talk about it. So it's a Call to Men football camp. Your focus is through Utica College.
Yep.
And this year it's June
23rd and 24th, Monday and Tuesday evening.
All right. So you talk about it being a one-of-a-kind in Central New York experience. So what makes it unique?
As far as I know, I hate to make that claim without
I'll make it for you.
Doing research, but I have looked out. And as far as a Call to Men says, we're the only one that they partner with. So I make that claim having done enough research to be confident to say we're the only one doing a camp like that where there's life lessons, and specifically with a Call to Men. We're the only one doing it with them. So there might be similar, but I haven't seen it. So that's what makes it unique is you come, you get to work out and train with college coaches and college players. Like a lot of the Utica University kids come and coach and do the drills with the kids. So for me, that would be awesome when you're a kid. I always remember like a few instances where I was a young athlete and there was a college kid that came along, and you talk about looking up to people. For me, that was everything. I was like, oh my God, this is a Syracuse player or whoever. And then you get to go do those drills with them and have fun for 2 days. That makes an impact in itself. But then we're the only ones doing the lessons along with football. So you get that great football experience at a university level with university coaches and players. And then you get the same coaches. These are the same trainers with the Call to Men, by the way, that do your training for the NFL, I think the NBA, the NHL, and the Armed Services. So you're getting A-level trainers with A-level lessons, and then you're getting this college football experience that's pretty unique as well. So that's why I make the claim that I think we're the only one, at least in Central New York and maybe throughout New York State.
Yeah. How much of it?
And it's free. So
okay.
I was just going to ask that.
And
So
it's
the
free.
people.
So that also makes it unique, is that you literally just show up with shoes, and that's all you have to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You started doing this what year?
2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's usually about 250, 300 kids.
Well, on the high year there was that. I think COVID put a little damper on it too, and I think the proliferation of year-round sports also takes some kids out. Everyone's doing their travel teams and stuff. But yeah, I think we've had at least 100 kids every year. So I think in total, we've probably had at least 1,000 kids come through. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Even
That's
if some
amazing.
of them are repeat, which a lot of them are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about the gala.
Yeah, we haven't had one in a while. COVID kind of. Well, we had a disco event
last year. You did the disco. Yeah,
I wouldn't call it a gala. That was more of a fun. Let's celebrate. Let's try to raise some money in a different way, which was a lot of fun. We probably will get back to doing a gala at some point. I don't know if we don't have any specific plans, but they were a big success. We are still running off the funds that we made in those first 3 years at the galas because we had such great attendance and such overwhelming generosity from our donors and sponsors. So we should and we will get back to that at some point, but we don't have the plan yet.
We went.
So
and it was
much.
awesome.
I just put it out there now, so it's out there.
Yeah.
It's
sure
so
my
much
sister's
work.
going to call me later
So
and say,
much
work.
are we doing a gala?
I didn't mean to put you on the
No,
spot.
no,
but
you're
we
right.
Did, we
I
did
get asked.
go,
She did mean
and
to
we
do it.
had so much fun. It
I
was
get asked
it was
about
awesome.
and
So
we should, and we will.
yeah.
Yeah.
How do people get involved as donors? Obviously you've got the fundraising events, but what else are you guys doing?
Yeah, we we haven't done much on the active fundraising events, but we always have donations available on our website, and we get consistent donations, whether we're advertising for it, asking for it, but people have consistently throughout the 7 or 8 years it's been now, like just donations randomly coming in from all over too, by the way. That first year we put the website up, I think we got donations from all over the country. And it was through people we knew or friends of friends or whoever it may be. But yeah, when you see the data on where it came from, it was pretty interesting to say, oh my gosh, it's not just central New York. It's not the Mohawk Valley, New York State. It's obviously California, but I mean, literally people from every corner of the country have donated through our website. So that's been probably the easiest way to do it. And we do like Giving Day and stuff like that, domestic violence awareness month. We do some advertising and some stuff like that too.
So if anybody's listening and they're golfing in our golf outing and they don't know a charity or nonprofit that they would like to donate to, this would be an awesome one to select.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked that.
Good job.
Thanks.
Let's talk about the hardest, perhaps, thing to measure, right? When it comes to, I hate to use the term ROI, but just making a difference, right? You talk about impact, making a difference. How do you know, right? What success stories do you have? What measures are you looking at to know, like, hey, this thing's working, we're making a difference?
And that's a great question because I talk about this often. But when you're talking about eliminating an event or an incident, how do you measure stuff that doesn't happen?
Right.
You know, so it's hard to measure it that way. But the only way I measure what we're doing and making an impact is by the comments and the feedback that I get from the kids that come through and from the parents or grandparents or whoever are sending their kids to the camp. And that, to me, it keeps me coming back every single year because it gets you know, it's work, it's time, but I hear from the kids and I hear from the parents that come through on what an impact it makes. I think about it as sometimes I go, it's just a football camp and it's this, but the feedback that I've gotten would blow your mind on what it's done for some of the kids and some of the kids that I've taken to the football games as their award prize. I could tell you a couple of stories. One, if you don't mind, this one is probably the most telling, and I might get emotional. So I think it was first or second year we did the camp. I picked 2 kids every year that are our game changer award winners. Floyd, we named it after Floyd Little, the Hall of Fame football player at Syracuse, because he was a donor and he was at our galas and he was a friend of Kristin's fund. So we named it after Floyd. So I basically just watched the kids the whole 2 days at the camp. I'm watching drills. I'm watching who's paying attention, you know, during the training sessions, who's engaged and who's being a leader. You know, I could kind of spot that throughout 6 hours of watching kids. So it was first or second year, and I had my eye on a kid the whole time. I'm like, this guy's really busting his butt. And every drill, he's up front in every meeting, looking the speaker in the eye. And I'm like, that's one of my winners. So I go over to him after the last night. I'm like, hey, can you introduce me to your dad? I want to tell him about the award. And so I go over. I'm introducing myself to the dad and asking him a little bit about him. And he goes, oh, by the way, he goes, what is Kristin's fund? He's like, I just saw an ad for a free football camp, and my son wanted to come. And they came from Oneonta. And so I tell him, you know, the story, and he's like, oh, my God. I go, what? He goes, I had no idea what this was all about and the story about your sister. And I was like, well, you know, I appreciate you guys coming. He's like, well, you know, he goes, I got to tell you something. He said, my son lost his mother 4 years ago in a domestic violence incident. And I was like, you know, my heart dropped. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. That's like something that I never expected to happen. Yeah. Putting on a football camp and then to see a kid who went through the same thing and then turn into this kid who's a leader and one of our award winners, that was just like, that just moved me like to my core. So that, and there's dozens of others, but that's the measurement for me. Sure. It's like seeing a kid come in, not only just come, but then be the leader that we're hoping to create by putting these on. So that's my measurement.
Do you bring kids back to talk to the kids? Like, so it's like alumni, if you will?
You know what? So many kids have asked to come back and coach and help. Yeah. Now, I don't think any of them have spoken yet, but I know one who would. I know it. I know Tino probably would want to. Yeah, we've had him, like several other kids
Yeah.
come through, like who've been there year after year, and it means a lot to them. And they go, "Oh, can I come back?" In fact, someone just reached out to me a couple weeks ago. "Hey, I graduated, but can I come back and coach this year at the camp?" And I said, "Of course you can. You're always welcome." So
I think the peer-to-peer is so powerful. And you bring up Tino, and we'll go there. Our son Connor is graduating with Tino this year. He's a soccer player. But just being in that circle, now with the boys, they're men, they're adult men now. And, just watching Tino operate, I think the true test of a leader and success to you and your program is it's not so much how he carries himself day to day personally, but how he has the confidence and the strength to step up and call out stuff that he doesn't see right with other people. And that's the power.
that's
right?
exactly what it's all about.
Yeah.
We wanted to have that ripple effect. So if we can create, and I don't say we didn't create because Tino's a special kid to begin with, probably before he ever came to our camp, but I do think it strengthened what he already had inside him. But we want to create that ripple effect so that we have kids from Oneonta, like west of Syracuse. So if we can put one kid from each team or each school, like Tino or whoever, to be that guy to say, "Hey, that's not cool. Let's behave differently," or just to be that leader. That's how you make that reach and that impact is by creating a bunch of or a little army of people who have heard that message and learned that lesson. So,
it gives them permission, I guess is the word, right? So like you said, these kids have it in them. They all have it in them. But I think people like you and the coaches, looking them in the eye and being like, "Hey, you have permission. It's your duty. It's your obligation, right? To speak up." And I think something in them clicks, and that's the power of this.
Yeah,
so
they feel empowered. You're right.
So we're going to shift slightly.
Sure.
Not only focusing on football, but being a parent and a father and the important lessons that you have to have in conversations that you have to have with your children about healthy relationships. What would you want parents in Central New York to know about having conversations with their sons and healthy masculine relationships with their partner?
I'd say don't hold back. First, just have the conversation and have it early. I don't think you have to browbeat it. I've always just personally tried to lead by example. And I got that advice a long time ago as a young father. Like, hey, I remember I asked a good mentor of mine, I'm having trouble with this. And he's like, hey, think back to our coach at the time. And he's like, how did he lead us? I'm like, he set a good example. It's like, that's what you have to do. So first and foremost, the biggest, I think, way to reach your kids as a parent is by setting that example yourself. Because if you're doing one thing and saying the other, they're not going to listen. But if you're modeling the behavior that you're talking to them about, then I think it will sink in and then that message will get across. But so I would say, A, make sure you're setting a good example yourself and leading by example. And then B, have that conversation. We don't hold back. Like my wife and I will have conversations as difficult as they may seem at the time. She's better at it than I am sometimes, but we have the conversation. So these are topics that kids need to hear. Maybe we didn't have them with our parents. I don't know about you guys. We didn't really have those conversations much, or I didn't want to hear them at the time. But at least you've said it and you've laid it out there. But if you've also modeled the behavior, then I think that's how you reach your kids. So
there has been a big shift in parenting, I feel like. Like we definitely talk about how we were raised, and not that we were raised wrong, but
it was different. It was just different.
The communication, and it's definitely more...
I can count on 0 fingers the number of deep conversations I had with my father.
Probably, yeah, exactly.
It's a series of grunts and
generational thing. I know. And again, I wouldn't listen even if he was trying to sit me down. I probably was too fidgety and
you're thinking about what you were going to do after you were done having the conversation with him.
But you got to try. You have to sit down and have the conversation. Whether they take it in, they might not at that point either. I'm learning that too. Is that things I've been telling them for years and years. They didn't listen back then, but now where they're at now, my kids are coming back and going, "Oh, that thing you talked to me about, I get it now. I get
back
it
to
now."
what you were saying too about a coach too, because like I could tell Jenna something like coming off the field, or even Connor coming from me, they probably don't even hear it, and then all of a sudden the coach will say the same thing. She's like, "Oh my God, Mom, he said the same thing." I'm like, "See." So
third party validation.
It's
and that's
huge.
why it's so important to be active in not just sports, but just clubs and, or musicals, just something where you're part of a team and you get that camaraderie and you have that adult leader.
You mentioned the teacher thing and the coach thing. You never know who that person is going to be that strikes the chord. It could be one single science teacher, whoever it is, but usually there's somebody that comes along. For me, anyways, there's always somebody, I think, for just about everybody that just resonates with you. And it's sometimes it's not your parents, but somebody will say something to you that will resonate, and you just never know who it's going to be. So I think you're right. Put them in front of good people that are leaders in different organizations, and one of them is gonna strike the chord.
All right, let's go to a place that might get you in trouble. It's a call to men, right? Yeah. And we alluded to how we grew up, and our parents were probably too far to the other side, right? Just toughen it up, and if you're not tough, you're a sissy, and rub dirt on it.
That's what Joe Ehrman's book is all about. By
okay, all right, I'll definitely go check it out.
Yeah,
and so we needed to correct that, but there are times, admittedly, that I'm like, I feel like we're going too far the other way. So do you get pushback, or the whole just focusing on men, right, and a man's role, responsibility? Like it's almost like, do you get shade for going there when we're in this time where everything society tells us everything's equal?
The answer is I haven't. No one's given me any pushback or questioned why it's a call to men or why it's. We have had girls come through the camp though, so I don't think we specify it. I would never turn someone away.
Sure.
A girl that wants to come. We've had several, but the whole reason for doing this with a call to men and getting this message across this goes back to Tony Porter's message, is that men are the perpetrators of domestic violence. I'm going to botch the statistics.
A lot more than
95%, maybe 95%. So if you want to reduce that number or eliminate it, you have to
focus
get to
on
the
that
boys and the men.
demographic.
Because we're the majority of perpetrators in domestic violence incidents. So I'm sure there would be a question about why we focus on that way, but that's the answer. Is if we really want to make an impact and reduce the incidence of domestic violence, we have to reach the boys because they're the ones committing most of the abusive situations. So
you got to look at the data, and that's where the data is, for sure.
I've definitely thought about expanding or doing different sports and getting the message to girls too, maybe in a different way or through a different organization. But from the get-go, it was, okay, let's reduce domestic violence. Let's raise a new generation of boys into men who will never commit an act of domestic violence or abuse. So that's why we focus on the boys, and the message is about becoming respectful men.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
It's
needed.
Yeah.
A lot of the kids, by the way, too, again, going back to what I hear from the parents, and I've had single mothers, single grandmothers. A lot of the boys that come through are raised either without a father in the household, or, it was a bad situation with the father to begin with. So mothers and grandmothers have come up to me, coaches. One of the coaches is a Herkimer police officer. He brought a whole busload of kids one year, and he's like, Joe, you don't understand how badly this message is needed for boys this age. He's like, thank you for doing it. So to get to that point, it's like, it's needed. There needs to be, somebody in their lives that is giving them the right message.
All right, let's go beyond. We can talk to you forever. I got a million questions, but we're at 30 minutes. Let's go beyond Central New York. So is the big vision for this, is it to keep it here? Is it to expand it? What's the future?
Right now, it's definitely going to be here. I've thought about doing one out west, but frankly, having Blaze, Coach Fagiano, and the coaches who are like, the minute I brought it up, by the way, I got to give Blaze a lot of credit too, because the minute I brought it up to him and needing help and asking for his help, it was like done.
You know why? He's an Ithaca guy.
That's right. Of course. Yeah, we were teammates. We're brothers. He's not going to say no to me. I also bought him and his staff a nice steak dinner at the coaches convention. I popped the question, so to speak, over some nice steaks. So it was difficult to say no, but it was a blink of an eye. Like, absolutely, Joe, we'll do whatever you need. And I was like, well, I don't know how to run a football camp. So can you guys do that part of it? Yes, we will. And then we had cooperation with the school itself too, letting us use the facilities and all that stuff. So, yeah.
This area supports mission like this. And that's one thing. That's one of the reasons that we are here doing this show, because the mission and the hope that people that live in this area is they want to give back and they want to support local and they want to help others.
100%. Yeah.
So I think you're right with keeping this here.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will draw people from even further away here for this.
Yeah.
For sure.
It has. Like I said, I didn't think we'd get kids from as far as we have. That's a pretty good swath.
Mm-hmm.
Central New York. I don't even know if there's anywhere further, but Oneonta to West Syracuse is it's a pretty good distance.
You're unique in so many ways, but the main one is you live in Southern California.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'd know that.
We're so jealous.
If we didn't know that, I don't know if we'd know that, right? Because you're always
often,
around.
Yeah.
We see you pretty often. I see you more than some people that live here year round. So what is the draw? What keeps you coming back here? And you've been literally all over. You've worked with some of the wealthiest people on the planet, some of the most successful athletes on the planet. You started right here in Central New York, and you keep coming back, literally driving across the country, which is mind-boggling to me. But
Scott hates the car.
14 legs now, 16 legs back and forth. Yeah. My heart is here. It always has been. Even, when we first moved to San Diego, and that was, it seems like a lifetime ago, in the 90s, but there was not as much communication back then. So when we left, it was like we were gone for a while, and you didn't see people for a while. You didn't FaceTime. You didn't have all the technological tools that we have now. But my heart has always been here. And obviously, both of us being from here, and our family's all still here locally at some capacity. But yeah, being, born and raised in Frankfurt, that's never, ever left. So, we're here a few months a year now. We'll probably be here longer now that we're about to be empty nesters. Having a second home here helps, obviously, but I still love it here. It's funny, but there's so much of New York that I have still yet to see that I still love coming back and like going off to the Catskills or Finger Lakes, or obviously the Adirondacks has always been a favorite too. But even right around here, there's still a lot of stuff that I have not experienced and that I absolutely love. And that's what keeps me coming back. And we wanted our kids to grow up and know their cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents really well. So that was a big part of it. But yeah, my heart has probably always just been right here in this valley.
You're probably a pioneer of, before it was LD, lifestyle design, right? You're one of the OGs there. How do you create a lifestyle that allows you to have freedom, flexibility, but still do meaningful work like you're doing?
Funny you say that, because I've actually been a remote worker since my son was born. I worked from home when my son was born 22 years ago. So it became a new thing, but I've actually been doing it for a long time, just because that's the essence of my job, is basically all on the phone and on my computer. So I've been lucky in that regard, but just keeping priorities. Obviously, there's always business that has to be done, and making sure that I get that business done and the work done. And then, going down the line, priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, and then making sure that stuff all gets done before the cross-country trip or whatever else comes up, or even during the trip. There's a lot of stops I have to make. I have to find internet signal sometimes. Going to have to get Starlink this year, I think. But that's just it, prioritizing things and making sure that the most important thing has to get done, it gets done. And then you can have, some experience or some fun and add things on to what you're already doing. It seems second nature to me, but I get that it's foreign to a lot of people. Like, how do you? I'm like, I don't know. I kind of always been doing it. So
a lot of people don't realize you're working, even though you don't have a building that you are in.
We get that a lot. Do you
we
ever
get that
work?
a lot. Yeah,
I'm like I never not
we
work.
work every
never
day.
not working.
Yeah,
I say I go on vacation, but I'm never on vacation.
Different office locations.
I'm not.
That's
on
what
vacation.
I thought.
We're going to Italy. I'm going to be working. I'll be up really early in the morning before everybody else for about 5 or 6 hours, and I'm sure going to be, depending on the time difference, who's where, my clients. But I'll be working when no one else is around, or realizing that I'm getting work done, so that I can enjoy the time later on.
All right, we end with rapid fire questions. We got a whole bunch.
We got
for
a
you.
lot of them. Yeah,
we
these
got
are
a
gonna
lot.
be fun.
But before we do that, let's plug the camp one more time,
Yep.
just so
And how do people
how
register?
do people get
and-
involved? How do they register?
Pull out the but all the information will be on our website at www.kristinsfund.com. We have a Facebook page, we have Instagram, I think we have LinkedIn, we have all the social media sites, so a lot of it's out there. Where the tickets are actually you register on Eventbrite. I don't know the URL.
Jay,
or
we'll
anything.
get it
We'll
all
get-
linked
yeah, we'll
up.
find
But
it for you.
you could just go on eventbrite.com and then search Kristin's Fund, and then the event will come up. It's free, obviously, and just go on, you click, put the name in. It's pretty simple. So you can find us on all social media outlets, and then right on our website too. It's pretty easy. We make it as easy as possible.
And it's after work, so to
Yeah,
speak. So
exactly.
5:30
Yep.
to 8:30 p.m. on June 23rd and June 24th. Totally free.
Totally free.
No reason not to get.
Weather's
kids
not an
involved.
issue either because we have the dome, obviously. So we
Mm-hmm.
go in, and we have had it happen a couple times. We have to go inside, but they got that big
They're
beautiful
football players.
indoor
Weather's
facility.
never an issue.
Shouldn't worry,
Yeah.
right? Shouldn't be a concern. But just to make
Hopefully,
it,
Now
we
the
don't have football
speakers.
weather at the end of June. We're all like, come on,
Yeah.
we need the nice
Yeah.
weather here.
I think we've had pretty good luck through the years with keeping it mostly outside. So
Cool. All right, fire it
let's
up.
go.
Best piece of advice you received as a young athlete?
There's a lot. I have to sift through like a file cabinet in my mind of that.
Well, flip
but
it. What's the best piece of advice or your go-to piece of advice for kids that you talk to?
Outwork everybody. It's that simple. Like I was never the most gifted athlete by far. I was an average high school athlete. In my mind, at least, I look back and think I outworked everybody to make a college football team and to play and to do things that I did in college and then afterwards. So you have to just make it non-negotiable that you have to outwork everybody unquestionably. There's no other way to get ahead of it unless you're somehow a supremely talented person. But even that ends at some point, and other people will bypass you. So you have to put more time in and outwork everybody else around you if you want to have the level of success that you dream about. So that's the best thing, and it's a simple thing. But my coach used to say, if you want to run, you have to run. If you want to lift, you have to actually lift. So you have to do those things. It doesn't
Again
happen
and
by
again and
itself.
again.
So you have to spend that time doing the things that will make you better.
They clearly teach that at Ithaca because that's a Todd Robbins piece of advice too.
Todd-
He says, just keep showing up. Just keep showing up. He goes,
Todd,
if you keep
I've
showing
got
up
that message.
every day, he goes, eventually you're the only one showing up.
Yeah, that's what I told. And the attrition is fun too. Like you think, oh, you show up and there's 100 kids there and some are all state and some are this or that. And then at the end of training camp, 25% are gone because they just couldn't cut it.
Yeah.
And then a couple fail out. So I partly lasted because of attrition, and then the other stuff, caught up later. But I think you're 100% right. If you just show up consistently.
What grade were you in during the 91 national championship season at Ithaca?
Sophomore year.
You're a sophomore. What was your
Yeah.
favorite memory from that season?
I would have to go back to I think we had lost one game, and we had a early schedule that we called our gauntlet, and we had to play 2 Division II teams. We played Springfield, we played AIC, American International, and then we played our rival Alfred, which was another tough game every year. But I think we had lost one game, and back then you had to pretty much run the table or one loss, or you were not going to make the playoffs. So we were down against AIC, and we'd already lost to Springfield. So we couldn't lose another game, or we weren't going to make the playoffs at all. And then we were down by, I believe, 10 with about 4 minutes to go. And I was third string, so I was watching all this, by the way. But it was one of the most magical games I've ever been a part of. We scored 2 touchdowns in the last 4 minutes to come back at this really tough opponent, and that kind of springboarded us out throughout the rest of the year. And I never forget. So if you're familiar with our coach, he was older at the time. I think he was about 64.
Butterfield.
Coach Butterfield came in the locker room after, and he pretty much had he teared up, and he was such an emotional, fiery guy. But he's like, he had this deep Maine accent. I'm going to butcher it, but he said, "I'll bloody my knuckles with you guys any day of the week." That was one of the greatest. He was just so fired up, and I remember the tear coming down his eye. And after that big victory, that was in addition to the playoffs and the national championship, but that was early in the year, and that was the turning point of our whole season.
Awesome.
So that year, that's one of my. The other one is my only catch that year. was playing St. Lawrence, and we were up big, so I got thrown in at the end of the game, and I had my first catch. It was a simple out route. The special part was, though, that one of my Notre Dame teammates was a linebacker on St. Lawrence, and he came flying into the pile and basically spearheaded me, and I got a concussion on the play. And I remember my eyes being crossed and running back to the huddle, like not knowing where I am, and my eyes went on cross. So
That was a special part?
yeah, that was then it was my teammate, and I still break his chops about it to this day because out of all the people
Well, thank God you remember it.
that I got concussed by it, it was by
All
my
right.
former teammate.
These get easier now.
Yeah. We'll go to the easy ones now. Mountains or lake?
Mountains.
Coaching or playing?
Coaching. Only because I'm old now.
San Diego beaches or Adirondack summers?
Adirondack summers.
All right, for life lessons, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or football?
It's hard because my early years were formed by my football lessons, and my adult years were formed by my jiu-jitsu
That's
lessons.
fair. That's a good answer. We can leave it at that.
They're both
Yeah.
both equally humbling, and you learn a ton of life lessons by doing each. I can't really pick.
One of your go-to restaurants in Central New York when you come home?
Oh man, that's a great one. We go to Ventura's pretty much every summer.
Mm-hmm.
Go to Tucker's.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever place he's got. I just was by Beef and Bird yesterday. I was
Yeah,
excited to
signs
see
up.
that's coming.
I know,
So
right?
whatever Tucker's got going, we go to his place. We go to the Blue Mingo all the time every
Yeah.
summer.
Oh, that's
one
a
of our
good
favorite
spot, yeah.
spots. And the Hawkeye Grill because we're out that way. So
Yeah.
those are
I've
a
never
few of
eaten
ours.
at the Hawkeye Grill. We go to Blue Mingo all the time.
Had drinks there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fair.
you don't have to eat.
It is a nice little ambiance. All right, so maybe you've already given us this one, but one book every young man should read.
Yeah, I love A Season of Life. That's a transformational book. I would probably start with that one for a young man. Yeah, that's a good read as a young man, and it's something that will resonate at the right age if you read it when you're young enough. Yeah, I think for a young man, that's probably my go-to.
Dream guest speaker for next year's camp. Could be anybody.
This year coming up or next year?
Next year.
I'm
You
still
probably
working
already
No,
Oh,
I
okay.
don't. I'm still working on it. I don't want to spoil it because I don't know, but you probably saw that I met Joe Torre recently.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wild way that happened. But Joe, I don't know if you know this, he grew up in an abusive household. That's why he started his foundation. So
Safe at home, right?
Yeah, safe at home, and it's not football, obviously, but he's got a great message. He's probably one of the greatest coaches or managers of all time in
Leaders,
any
yeah.
sport, and he's a very cordial, gentlemanly person. So I thought he would be perfect no matter when. So I don't know if we could pull it off, but I have already reached out.
I believe in you.
Yeah.
All right, last one. If 16-year-old Joe could see you now, what would surprise him the most?
His hair's gone, first of all. Where did it go? It was long and flowing and curly at one point. What happened? I didn't think it would actually happen, but he'd probably be surprised that I am still living here, to be honest, because at that young age, I was already, where are we going to go? What am I going to do after college? And, big dreams of traveling and going out there. But he'd probably be surprised that I still come back here and that, this is still kind of home.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, we're fortunate that you do. Joe Palumbo, Kristin's Fun, A Call to Men football camp coming up end of June. We'll link everything in show notes. Appreciate you carving out some time for us.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. I really appreciate it.